Hello and welcome to the webinar Rapid Solutions for Remote Working. Today we'll be talking about the impacts of the current pandemic and how that's had an impact on IT in general. We'll be talking about how Atlas Cloud can help in terms of both offering advice, but also in terms of the solutions that you may want to take from us, at which point I'll hand over to my colleague Chris, and he will also talk about Microsoft Teams a little bit, as that's a tool that helps facilitate a lot in terms of remote collaboration, and then there'll be a Q&A with Chris, our CTO. So just to recap on who we are, I'm Ben Tomlinson, Marketing Manager at Atlas Cloud, and my colleague Chris is Chief Technical Officer at Atlas Cloud and also co-founded the organization almost 10 years ago now. So before we begin, a little bit about Atlas Cloud. Now, our mission has always been, ever since we started, to enable people to do great work from anywhere. And we used to position that as something that for forward-thinking companies who wanted to gain competitive advantage by enabling their employees to work from anywhere, with the assumption that they can work more often and therefore work more effectively. But it just so happens that now during this current pandemic, there are a lot more people than previously imagined looking to enable people to do great work from anywhere. So Atlas Cloud, we've been lucky enough to win a few awards along the way for our leading technology. Last year we won Best Virtualization Product at Computing's Technology Product Awards, and we have a couple of others on our shelf as well. But traditionally we offer hosted desktops, application virtualization, digital workspace solutions, disaster recovery, email security, and network optimization, amongst a few other things, which all align to that general goal of enabling people to do great work from anywhere. But enough about Atlas Cloud. We're here to talk about the pandemic and how companies can respond effectively. So the pandemic has obviously brought through a number of problems. The first being centered around VPN. VPN is something many organizations have turned to help them enable remote working. And whilst it has been something that has enabled many remote workers to do their work remotely and securely, up to this point, we've learned more and more and heard more and more reports that VPNs just aren't capable to do this at scale, and it's offered numerous quirks, let's say, kicking people off, and generally, although it's allowing people to work, it's not allowing them to work effectively. So VPNs has become a big problem we've seen for many organizations. Then there's the question of security, obviously. Working from home, perhaps with personal devices, offers many security concerns, which led to the organizations panic buying laptops for their companies. However, on the flip side, using cloud technologies can get around many of the security concerns, even with using personal devices, which we'll come on to later when I hand over to Chris. So it can enable organizations to implement bring your own device policies where they can essentially save time and money. So I touched upon the hardware shortages. There's a mass shortage on laptops at the minute, and also servers. People are needing to upgrade their servers so that they can cope with this increased demand. So there's not a lot of hardware going around at the minute, which makes the problem even worse. And finally, there are also bandwidth problems and specifically caps from ISPs, because there's a shortage of bandwidth because more people are using the internet to access more things than have ever before to enable this remote working, and also outside of working hours when everyone wants to stream Netflix. So that's another significant problem, which again can be overcome through specific cloud technologies that Chris will come on to later. So there have been many people commenting for a long time now that basically the world of work will change to some extent, and we as a general population will embrace remote working more than we have ever done. But now, specifically now, there are a lot of people commenting on how that's definitely happening, but they didn't expect it to happen in this way. And also, there's many commenters on the future of the VPN technology. Many have been saying for a good while now that the VPN has seen its days and will slowly die off, and the general consensus is that this may well be the catalyst behind that. Okay, so you may have seen, if you follow Atlas Cloud closely, that last week we offered free advice for UK businesses that are in the situation where they're sort of struggling to effectively enable remote working. As mentioned before, our goal has always been to effectively enable remote working, to enable great people to do great work from anywhere, and we really truly believe that we are the experts in this. And whilst we're not looking to specifically profit from this pandemic, so we're happy to offer our advice free and no obligation to anyone who feels that they need a second opinion on the next step that they're looking to take to ensure business continuity. Whether it's just a quick second opinion, you've got something in mind, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll schedule some time with one of our technical experts so that they can diagnose your problem and make sure that you're heading in the right direction. But also we are an organisation, and there are certain services that we can offer. And before Chris starts to do an overview of what we would do to your business, what solutions we could offer to your business, I'll just quickly touch upon how we have responded to the pandemic. So there are obviously many concerns around immediacy. Companies are looking for very quick solutions right now. And the kind of solutions that we previously offered, for example, hosted desktops, our bread and butter solution, for example, has lead times in months rather than days, and in this current climate, that just isn't acceptable. And also, the general adoption of cloud is a significant one. It's not something that organizations could and should take lightly. So that is also a very significant factor given the immediacy. So basically, we've adapted our solutions, and we now offer very immediate term, rapidly available solutions that we can turn around in days. So I will, at this point, hand over to my colleague Chris, who will take you through the solutions.
Whether that be a PC or a laptop, or even a thin client device. This technology has existed for a significant amount of time, but it's traditionally had issues due to bandwidth, but more importantly, no optimization. So it's been a slow access, it's been a poor end user experience. But the way that this solution is put together allows an optimized session all the way through to your PC in the office. So it's a very, very thin connection. It's optimized, it doesn't take up much bandwidth, and it's secure. So you'll find that the access to your physical machine is exactly the way that we would implement access to a virtual machine. It's using the same security protocols, the same optimizations, the same controls, but it just happens to be to a physical machine rather than a virtual machine. Now, some of the main advantages of this is you've already got your software installed, you've already got your customized workspace on your PC or laptop, and it can be deployed really quickly. It can be deployed extremely quickly if you already use Citrix on site. If you do use Citrix, then this is just a quick bolt on to add. If not, we can help set it up really quickly because the actual control side of this, the kind of mechanics that make it work, exist in the cloud. So that's something that we can help rapidly provision, and then we'll just work with an IT contact. If you've got a super user on site or an IT team on site, they just need to give us a few basic details, and we can enable this access. It's probably worth pointing out as well that one of the benefits of this is everything we do at Atlas Cloud is in the monthly subscription world. So you only pay for what you use, and this is one of those products that really allows you to just consume and use when you need to use it. So one thing that I would highlight that may not be obvious is if you plan on forecasting that your team are going to be working from home for the next 3 months, you can pay for this solution per user per month for the next 3 months, and then it can be turned off and you can stop paying for it. Now, fingers crossed, something similar to Corona doesn't happen again. But if it happens, and if it happens in 2021, then literally there will be a checkbox to re-enable this access, and then you pay per user per month. If there's something similar that happens or a disaster that happens in the future, and people need to work from home for any health reasons, epidemics, pandemics, etc. Um, this has been a good wake up call. You've already got the infrastructure that you've invested in your office, in your PCs and laptops, and again, you would just be able to start paying for this in 2021, in my example, for another 3 or 4 months or a single month, depending on what the actual disaster situation is. One of the products I want to talk through is there's actually two products here. There's Citrix Managed Desktops and there's Windows Virtual Desktop. You may have come across these terms or the acronym CMD or WVD in the press. As it stands today, the latest recent Microsoft announcement confirms that Windows Virtual Desktop usage is up 3 times since the coronavirus took hold of the world. So there are a large number of people who are now accessing their workspace. So their applications, their data, their user customizations, their SaaS tools through a managed desktop, which sits in one of the Microsoft Azure locations. You may already know there are 2 locations in the UK. So for anybody who has any data sovereignty concerns here, all of that data can be guaranteed to remain in the UK. So what this does is, again, this allows an optimized connection through to a Windows desktop, a Windows 10 desktop. It can be integrated with Office 365 and all of the Office 365 or MS 365 tools that come there, such as your Office suites, your OneDrive, your SharePoint, your Teams, etc., and all of the other marketplace tools that integrate with those products. And you can access this from anywhere just by going to a URL wherever you are in the world. Obviously, people aren't getting too far away from the house at the moment, but it does mean that you can also access from any device in your household that supports a browser. Simple authentication through, and you're onto all of your applications in a virtual desktop environment. Now, Ben highlighted that DaaS traditionally, and when I say DaaS, I'm talking desktop as a service. He highlighted that it traditionally has a longer lead time. So that can be because service providers need to invest in hardware for your solutions, and those have associated lead times. One of the advantages here is that we can fire up deployments quickly in public cloud. I know there probably will be a question because it's been in the press quite significantly recently about Microsoft and Microsoft Azure running out of capacity. That only affects certain services in certain regions. So worst case, in the situation we find ourselves in, it might be that a virtual desktop gets deployed for a customer in the UK West region, which is Cardiff, instead of the UK South region in London. So it's just worth bearing that in mind in the current situation. However, there is significant capacity in lots of different regions. So the Citrix side of it offers the same enhancements that I discussed in the previous product, the business continuity as a service. So you will get an optimized connection. You will perform better on low bandwidth connections. You will have better support for plug and play devices like headsets and webcams. You'll find that they just work and they get passed through to your session. All of that work has been done in advance to make sure you can just plug and play devices. Importantly, there are optimizations for Teams. So for anybody who's thinking, well, I'm interested in going into a virtual desktop environment, but I heavily rely upon Teams or other collaboration tools, you'll find that these work really, really well. We use them ourselves in this environment to run team meetings, video calls, share documents, and because of the optimizations, you'll find that they work really, really well. With this model, you can run your virtual desktops or your virtual applications if you just want a single application. I'll just stop and talk about that briefly because we find this is a common use case. We find that people have already embraced cloud-based storage, cloud-based SaaS tools, but there may be 1, 2, or 3 traditional applications, such as a payroll or an accounting application that's still installed within the finance team. And it might be that only a subset of your users or your staff need access. A 100-seat business might have a finance team of 5 people, and they may need access to a Sage application, which is not fully cloud enabled. That application can be delivered as a single application from this environment. You don't need to move every single one of those 100 users into this environment. You can consume it in whichever way suits you best. And more importantly, you can rely upon Atlas to provide that as a complete managed service, and we can run that for you and give you an indication of the price. But in this environment, you can also run it in your environment. If as a business you've already made the move to public cloud and you're consuming Microsoft Azure services, we can set this up in your environment, and we can just provide the initial setup and the support so that you've still got control of all of your assets and you can apply your security policies. And what's interesting is Citrix also offer the option of running it in their Azure. So you can click EU, it will fire up in one of the EU data centers. This does bring 1 or 2 benefits. So the single price you see is what you pay. You will still have to pay for your consumption, but you don't have to worry about having your own Azure. You don't have to wait for an Azure environment to be set up. And you can also provision non-domain joined devices. So for anybody that runs a seasonal workforce, temporary workforce, you can provision these guys with a standardized experience with standard set of tools, a standard set of security controls and applications and files for them to work on, but they don't need to join your domain. So therefore you're not having to give them additional security controls that you don't want to give to a temporary worker. And that's an advantage of using the Citrix Azure environment. It's probably just worth pointing out as well that you can bring your own licenses to this environment. So if you've already invested in Microsoft Enterprise Agreements, for example, or more recently, Microsoft 365 agreements, you can bring those Windows licenses to this environment. Okay, and this is just we're just going to quickly talk about the current promotion from Microsoft, which covers Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft, through their partners such as ourselves, are offering a 6-month free trial of Teams. I'm probably jumping ahead. I think that's the surprise on the next slide. So I best to actually tell you what Teams is. So for anybody who's not familiar with Teams, it's a collaboration tool that allows you to chat with your colleagues. It allows you to call your colleagues, video call them, run team sessions with video or voice, to share documents, to co-edit documents and collaborate, to integrate with applications from a marketplace, to track work, to track usage. There are a number of ways you can use this tool. It really is growing day by day. We use it internally for team meetings. Some of us use it as our cloud-based telephony system, so we can have phone numbers assigned here, and we can have consumption billing where the business will top up a certain amount of credit into a pool and allow their staff to use it as their primary telephony system. So replacing any legacy system that may be on site and requires on-site connectivity. It comes with all of the security features you would expect. It integrates with other areas of Microsoft Azure, the Security Center, Intune, and endpoint managements as well. So the offer I described is available to people who've not taken a Office or MS 365 subscription in the past that has Teams included within there. If you do meet that criteria, then as it stands today, you could have Teams completely free for 6 months, and that is actually for up to 1,000 members of staff within your business. So should cover most businesses. When the trial is up, you can either extend it or just let it expire. You'll go into a grace period of 30 days. It won't charge you. And it does come enabled with the features that I discussed, such as video conferencing, voice calling, and importantly, screen sharing. So you can, all look at a single document and collaborate on a single document at the same time. I did describe some of the features that you can get from the marketplace. So if you want to integrate any planning tools, objective-driven tools, to-do lists, etc., that you want to share with your team, you can. But you can obviously also take advantage of some of the Microsoft features that come with this, such as the video sharing tools, SharePoint, Whiteboard for sketching up and sharing virtual whiteboards while you're in a team meeting session on Teams.